Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on my channel. In this week's video we are going back to shadow box dioramas, whatever you want to call it. Things I make in the shadow boxes because I'm kind of living out of a storage unit. Not really. I'm not living out of a storage unit, but all my stuff's in storage. So it's just easier for me to make things I can easily stack up and get out of my way if I need to. Like many people I assume in the world right now, or at least in the sphere I'm in online, I am watching Severance. And every week I just can't wait. Every Friday I watch it, I sit down, dinner, dessert, watch Severance. It's such a good show. I just wanted to make something from the show. And I wanted to do something last season. Season never ended up making it. Decided to make something from this season. However, can't really tell you what it is because it might be a spoiler for people who haven't watched season 2 yet or people that want to watch it in the future. So I'm not gonna give any spoilers. What I will say is what I'm making today is a scene that when somebody gets off an elevator, this is what they see. And there's a person. But I didn't do the person. No spoilers. There's no spoilers in this video at all. No spoilers. It's just, the show is so strikingly nice looking. I don't even have words for it. Like, it's just shot well. The cinematography is really good on the show. It really lends itself, I think, to making miniatures, to be honest. Like, I really do. Like, I think that, like, oh, this could be made in miniatures. Yeah, I made something from the show. Let me go ahead and turn on the camera. We'll get started, and you'll see. Again, no spoilers, so you're good to watch this even if you haven't watched season 2 yet. Of course, to start off this project, I really had to fight and struggle with my printer because, you know, what's a printer if it's not trying to mess up your projects? I knew I needed to print out the painting. That is the focal point of this miniature. And as you can see here, I had many, many attempts before I finally got one that worked and printed out okay. This painting may seem weird, and honestly, if you watch the show, it's still kind of weird and you still don't really understand it, but I don't know. There's something I really like about this painting that is just really off-putting. Like many, many, many of the paintings and art in this show. And honestly, if you don't know what this show's about, even if you do know what the show's about, the paintings are just kind of unhinged. I don't know. There's so many theories about them. And who's right? Who will know in the end? I don't know. We'll all know, hopefully. I do want to give credit where credit is due, and this original painting is by Danny Illustration on Instagram. I'll go ahead and link him below in the description. I'm not entirely sure, but from what I can gather, I believe that he works in film and television, and he does a lot of the stuff for Severance. If you're interested, he's linked in the description below. If you watched my Kermit video, you know that this is a technique that you can do to mimic an oil painting. You just take Mod Podge and you kind of follow the brushstrokes that you believe would be on the painting, or if you can see the brushstrokes, you can just follow them actually. But what you do is you just kind of layer it up, and at the end, it kind of looks like this. You can see that there's some texture, and it's not perfect, but when you do angle it, it looks like brushstrokes, which is what I was going for, and I really like it. I really like how you can mimic oil paintings in this way. After that had dried, I cut out the different sides, and then I put it on a piece of mat board. Now, the black border that you can see on this painting, I was actually using because I knew that's the size I wanted the frame around the painting to be, and I figured if I just printed it out, I could cut the mat board out at that size. So that's why you see a black border around the painting. That will be gone later. It will be cut off. After the mat board was the right size, I went ahead and cut off the black border and then traced the picture as centered as I could possible, so that way I would know where the frame would be and where the painting would be on the mat board. I wanted the painting to be inset from the frame so it looked like an actual frame painting, and the way I went about that is I just slowly scored the mat board, and then I ripped off the top layer of the mat board so that way when I glued the painting to it, it would be inset a little bit. But before I glued it, I needed to paint the frame gray, and then go over that with a layer of silver, which I learned a technique from one of my subscribers. They commented very nicely, and I had no idea that you're supposed to put down a base color first when using metallic paint. But I did the gray, did the silver, before I then glued in the painting. I almost cut this out, but I wanted to show people that sometimes you do make mistakes when you're making art and miniatures, and I did get a little bit of green paint on here. I don't know if you can even really see it, but I knew it was there. Luckily, my cat is just shaking so much, and I can't cut out every time he does it because it'll be no video. But I realized very quickly that you could just scratch it off. That's what I did, and there's still a little bit, but I don't think you can see it. Next came time to finally start making the bench, and let me tell you, this was one of the most stressful parts of this miniature. It may be one of the most stressful and irritating miniatures I've ever made. I knew that I could only make it a certain size because I needed to fit the depth of the shadow box, but I was really frustrated, as you'll see. There's gonna be a lot of frustration coming up. After I got the general shape down of this bench, or you know, at least as close as I thought I could make it without any kind of sculpting tools, I had to make it so that would fit inside the shadow box, because the shadow box is only a certain amount of depth, and this is something I play with a lot in my shadow box dioramas. Like for instance, when I had a dresser, I just made a flat dresser so it would fit within there, so you get the idea of it without it looking exactly like it. And I've also made TVs like that. That's what I wanted to do with the bench. It needed to give you the idea of the green bench while being able to fit inside the shadow box. While waiting for the air dry clay cushions to dry, I mixed an off-white white paint. An off-white white paint is hard to say. I mixed an off-white white paint and I painted the background, which is the back wall that the painting hangs on. Like many of my projects, this project had a lot of dry time. There was painting dry time, air dry drying, dry time. I'm really struggling to talk today. There was air, dry, clay, dry time. I don't know if I'm making sense. But anyway, there was a lot of dry time in this project, just like all my other projects. So for this one, while waiting for the back white wall to dry, I started working on the green paint for the cushions. And this was not a paint I had to custom mix this, and it was difficult because if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I'm not good at color theory or being able to pull out colors of what something is and how to add one color to another. I just don't do it. I'm better if the color just naturally comes out of a bottle that way. To recap, I had to wait for the air dry clay to dry, and then I had to wait for the paint on the air dry clay to dry. Does any of this make sense to anyone? I had to wait for the clay to dry and then the paint to dry. And now we're moving on to making the bench. This was probably this is the most frustrated I think I've ever been making a miniature because it's so tiny, and I decided to use paper clips because I had some metal wiring that I used for the card table, but it was incredibly difficult just trying to get these to bend the way I wanted them to, not be sharp so I wouldn't stab myself on accident, and getting them to hold up correctly. It was kind of a nightmare, to be honest, and I don't know how I could have done this differently. I tried thinking about easier ways. I originally tried to air dry clay make the legs. I was just going to paint them silver, but they're so skinny. The chrome detailing on the chair is so skinny and so tiny that it just kept like breaking and not holding up. So I couldn't do air dry. So I figured paper clips, but honestly, I don't know if I would make this miniature again, looking back, based solely on this bench. Maybe if I could 3D print it or something. I don't own a 3D printer, but maybe if I could 3D print it or something like that, or maybe like a resin printer. I just would not recommend doing it the way I'm doing it unless you are very skilled. And I know there are people out there who are very skilled at these kinds of things. So if you are, feel free. You know, if you make like jewelry or something where you have to do a lot of the bending of the wires, you could probably do this a lot better than I can. I struggled a lot, and it was very frustrating. I broke it apart many times trying to just get it to look right. And looking back, like I said, I would not make this again because it was, I don't even necessarily love how it looks in the end. So the amount of frustration that went into it to me was ultimately not worth it. And I'm not saying this to discourage anyone or talk down on myself. I'm just trying to be real. I feel like if you're spending your time, you're taking your time out of the day to watch this video, I should be real. And to be honest, this is just not, it was not a fun experience making this bench. And so I just want people to know that when they make art, sometimes there are parts that you just don't enjoy, and that's okay. You take that and maybe you don't do something like this again. And to be honest, I will be very hesitant to make anything like this again that involves so much bending. And I thought I learned this when I made the card table, but apparently I did not. Now, if you're following along on screen instead of listening to me ramble, you will see that I'm working on the concrete floor, which what I did is I did a base layer of a lighter gray, and then I took a darker gray and stippled it on. At first I tried using a paper towel, and then I moved on to this kind of sponge brush. I forgot what they're called, but this spongy brush I'm using right here. And then I did another stipple layer of the lighter gray again on top of the darker gray. This was to try and just mimic concrete, and I like how it turned out. I mean, it's not the best faux concrete, but it was such a small sliver that I didn't think anybody would even really be looking at it. I just wanted, if someone were to look down, they would get the idea of what it's supposed to be. I put down a layer of glue, and then I put down the little insert part that holds the shadow box together and makes sure it doesn't shake. And then I put my 1, 2, 3 blocks on top until it was dry. If you've ever been in an office building that has these kind of cheap walls that are like not even real walls, you've probably seen that some of them have like this silver kind of metal piece that gaps the two pieces of wall in the middle, like it's a seam almost. And so that's what I'm creating here, is because in the picture that I showed at the very beginning, you can kind of see that there is like a sliver beneath the paintings of these seams that hold the walls together. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just recreating those and gluing them in. And you won't even really see these, but I felt like it added to the scene. I put glue all over the back of the painting, fit it into its spot, and then put 1, 2, 3 blocks on top because it was a little warped, and I wanted to make sure that it dried flat. I also noticed that there's a little black baseboard along the bottom that would cover up the seal of the bottom of the floor and the wall, so I went ahead and made a little black strip, and then I glued it on so that way it would match the photo. While waiting for that to glue, I got to do the really, really, really fun part of gluing in the bench. Can you tell by my tone that I really enjoyed it, and it was really, really fun because these paper clips, even though I had glued them on, maybe, you know, I'm about to say this and I feel like I should have used super glue, but I don't have any super glue. I only had tacky glue. So I used that. These paper clips that I made the legs out of kept wanting to fall off and kept wanting to be angled weird, and it felt like the more I fought them, the more they fought me. And this was it for the bench. At this point, I was so over it. I was ready to just like be like, I don't think this video needs to go up because I can't do this, and it was driving me nuts, and I just didn't want to. But I persevered. Obviously, you're watching this video right now. I didn't cancel it. This bench was the bane of my existence, and honestly, I don't ever want to see it again. This shadow box, I feel like, needs to go in storage and stay hidden away from me for the rest of my life, and I'll be happy for that. Anyway, I'm being dramatic, but the bench really did cause me a lot of issues, and gluing it in was not great either. But I glued it directly against the wall, even though in this scene that's not how the bench shows. It is more like in the middle of the room. I need to fit it in the shadow box, so I have to make compromises. Once all the dry time was dried and all the paint and clay was all dry, I went ahead and stuck it in there, and this is what we got. This is the shadow box. That's this week's video. This is the diorama we're working on. That is done. A couple of things. Overall, I think it's fine. It's so weird because I think like as artists, we always expect ourselves to be doing better and better and building on our skills, and like the things we make will just be better than the last. And I don't feel that way about this. I don't know what it is. This is not my favorite thing I've ever made. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it. I mean, there's some things I would tweak. The bench really gave me a lot of issues when I was making it. And if you look really closely, you might have even already seen it, but I actually had to adjust this after the last clip. I had to like shift it all over because I realized it wasn't centered. But if you look like really closely, like the bench kind of isn't flat like it's supposed to be. I don't know. I guess as artists, we always want to be improving, and I feel like I didn't improve on this one. I feel like I was trying new things. I mean, again, I've only worked with air dry clay one other time. Yeah, one other time. And so I'll link that video if you want to watch it. But I'm trying to like take a bunch of different techniques that I've learned recently and apply it. I did the faux oil painting, I did the air dry clay, and I don't know. Let me know if you've ever made a miniature and you're just kind of like disappointed with it and you feel like I should be doing better than this. Let me know in the comments. Is it just me? Am I losing my mind? Because I feel like maybe I am. That's it for this week's video. Next week's video, I'm not sure if I'll be working on the 24 scale dollhouse from last week or not, because I'm still waiting to see if anybody else has any other ideas. I think I might know the direction I'm going with it, but I don't want to for sure start probably like another week. I don't know what next week's video is going to be. We'll see. It's all up in the air. Really, it just is what it is. So that's it for this week's video. If you like me or you like miniatures, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the like button below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.